everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Comic Corner. Today, I am your host, TJ, aka Fat Thor, and here we do news, reviews, and interviews. And today, we have a very special interview for y'all. Today, I am joined by the writer of the current Storm series from Marvel's new From the Ashes X-Men line. We welcome Murewa Ayodele to the podcast. Murewa, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. You got the name correctly. Nice.
Let's go. Yes, I told him before we got on here. I said, I'm an idiot. People who watch the show know like I am bad at pronouncing names when we go through like artists and stuff. So I had to make sure I got you right because I am such a fan of this series. I am such a fan of your writing. I think that I have been keeping up with all of the From the Ashes stuff. This has to be one of my favorite solo series. I'm sorry, Martin Kokolo, who's on Wolverine. I'm sorry, brother. I love Wolverine too, but Storm is just incredible. But before we get into Storm, something we typically like to do, a lot of shows like to do, is kind of go back down memory lane a little bit. See, the origins of the writer. So you talk about you grew up in a kind of small town in Nigeria. You talk about also how your access to comics growing up was very limited. And there was some books that were sold at like gas stations and banks. And you point out one book in particular called Super Strikers, which was a episodic book about soccer players. So I wanted to ask you, with us in America being so spoiled with media in general, but especially comic books, do you feel that your early days of like having to search for art as opposed to having it thrust upon you like how we have here, do you think that that contributed to your kind of creative style and the way that you approach storytelling today?
Yes, I think to a certain extent, because sometimes I'm telling a story and I see a lot of people already like predicting, oh, I'm so sure this is where it's going based on a lot of comics they've read in the past, you know, and then it doesn't go that way, and then they're like shocked, and it's always very hilarious because I'm like, I don't have similar backgrounds with you, so expecting that I would write the story the same way Frank Miller wrote it, a couple of decades ago, the way this writer wrote it, so the way this X-Men series went, and I'm like, I didn't grow up reading those series, so if there are any similarities, some are coincidences, and then my voice takes over, and because of that limited access to the ones that I have, I think I overdid them with how much I watched them. So I think from a very early age, I was able to break down the stories. When you've watched Samurai Jack episodes like almost a million times, you start learning how each episode starts. You start learning how to open a teaser. You start learning all the lyrics of the songs. And you know the dialogue, the exchange, so different things like that. So I think the limited access allowed me to be able to analyze stories better and see why does this work and this one didn't work. So yeah, it's possibly a very, very huge factor having
Yeah, and
limited access.
I feel like it probably even gives you a little bit more freedom creatively because like you were saying, if you grow up with all of these just like the story structures, the hero fights the villain and whatever, you just inherently like have that locked in your brain. So
Yeah.
not just like always being exposed to that, I think again allows you a lot of creative freedom to really explore these stories in new ways, which I think is really, you really show that in your series, Akugan, and obviously in Storm, and My Grandfather Was a God, which obviously is kind of what got you on Marvel's radar.
Yes.
But you led into my next question perfectly, mentioning Samurai Jack, because that was obviously a very huge influence on you. You talk about how you really kind of discovered superheroes through cartoons. And it wasn't until you went off to college that you really started being exposed to like comic books like
Yes.
Iron Man,
Hmm.
Batman, you mentioned Spider-Man, I mean the classics, right? But
Yeah.
through all this time when you started, like, that awakening really began, do you remember at all, like, the first time you came across the X-Men or Storm in particular? Or was it just kind of like you're just taking in so much stuff?
Yeah. Um, when it comes to Storm, like I always say, like to me, Storm is like to people in the US, like Superman or Batman. Like, do you really remember the first time you had the Superman Batman encounter?
True.
It's always been there. There's always
Mhm.
been one Superman merch. Maybe one of the toys that your parents got for you had the Batman logo already, So it's just always been there. So I was born in the 90s. So these characters had existed like decades before I was born. So they were just always around me. So I did have that experience. But what really put it into the forefront for me was the movies. The movies actually started first. It was after watching the movies, and like, oh, why did they keep emphasizing this Wolverine guy, and stuff like that. And I now discovered X-Men the animated series, so I went back to go and watch X-Men the animated series and binged like the old seasons, and I was like, okay, okay, I think I'm hooked on this. And then later I moved on to, YouTube videos like Comics Explained, where they talk about many of these plot lines and the likes
Mhm.
before I now eventually had access to the actual digital comics to read and everything like that. So yeah, so that's how the journey to X-Men is very convoluted. It
Mhm.
was just always there, and it was through
Yeah.
movies and cartoons and comics.
I love that so much because obviously I am a huge fan of Storm. There's a lot of big fans of Storm here, but I love the way you describe it, like paralleling it to Superman. Like you said here, it's like I don't even like you said, I don't remember the first time I saw. It's like it was just always there, and to hear that,
There, yeah,
in there's certain characters in other parts of the world that mean that to other people. So I love that Storm, has that influence on people, even if it's not as much in the States. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about, again, you're leading into my, I think you looked at my document sheet before here because you're leading into my questions perfectly. But uh, a big part of your work and something that you're bringing into Storm is mythology. And you really play around with, the mythology of where you grew up. And as a mythology nerd myself, I had to ask you just a little bit about, the mythology of where you grew up. And you talk about how, when you started kind of transitioning from sci-fi stories into mythology, you were kind of what's the word, like kind of prideful about it because you're like, I grew up with all of this stuff, I know this
yeah.
stuff, like no one knows this better than me. So again, how did that mythology background and growing up with all this stuff around you, how do you think that had also influenced your storytelling and your approach to taking these deep explorations of these obviously iconic historical concepts?
Yeah, like you said in like your earlier questions is the fact that I also grew up in Nigeria where a lot of the entertainment we were getting are from various corners of the world. You know, I think I might be wrong because I have little exposure to you know living in the US, but US had so much content. They produce so much that you can literally survive just watching only American produced stuff because they have that much. But here Nigeria has that, it produces a lot, but it's not enough to satiate you, especially as a growing child. So you watch a lot of stuff from American stuff, you watch a lot of things from Japanese, the manga, some still coming from the UK, some Chinese movies, Indian movies are extremely popular here too, like really, really popular, like you can't ignore it. I know how popular Mr. Bean was, that is from the UK. So all these things were coming in that they had their own film language, they had their own tropes. So I didn't see them as tropes. I just saw them as, oh, this is cool because everybody you could from any movie you watched, anything could happen because they all had their different things. So that helped me in my storytelling not to, for example, in Storm, there is no villain so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like issue 1 to 3, we've not seen a villain. That's very unusual for a superhero comic. Issue 1 is where you bring in your big bad, to introduce your big
Mm-hmm.
villain. And in Storm, there is no big villain so far. Even issue 4 where we're teasing is still Doom and Storm are talking. It's not like hero villain kind of fights. It's a negotiation. So the way the stories are unfolding are not typical. So
Mm-hmm.
and that's also allowed me to see this, that I can mix my background with of this mythology of these things into these modern stories without it feeling like you're shoehorning something. So
Mm-hmm.
it just felt really really natural, and like I said in like the interview you are referencing, uh I love a lot of sci-fi, and I, I kept getting criticisms like, oh yeah, I wasn't recognizing the Yoruba culture enough, the Nigerian culture enough, this traditional stuff, and I was like, I live in a state named after a goddess. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I see all these things daily, so I know these things more than you city folks, I can tell
Yeah.
these stories probably even better, I I had a Yoruba teacher that was an actual witch doctor,
Mm-hmm.
things like that it would talk about some spells and stuff. So it
Yeah.
was
You're the
always
expert.
very weird. Yeah, it was always weird listening to some of those things. So it's so integrating them, and growing up to I also loved Greek mythology, you
Mm-hmm.
know, also Norse mythology, and I started seeing some of these similarities, especially when I compared to our own mythology too. And I saw some places where they differed, you know, in the way
Mm-hmm.
they told the stories, the things they make emphasis on thematically, you know, you see how the mighty is victorious sometimes in a lot of Western stories, but the mighty here are usually extremely tragic.
Mm-hmm.
It's more complicated. I think the the heroes in our stories are usually more like Loki,
Mm-hmm.
the trickster gods are
Yeah.
usually like, so things like that. And like, okay, what does this say about our culture if the trickster gods have this like importance, if we also emphasize more of the hunters than the warriors in our
Mm-hmm.
stories, there are more emphasis on hunters than warriors. Hunters are same as the adventurers than the warriors, so they are not conquerors, you know
Mm-hmm.
there's something else that motivates them. So all those things just made me inquisitive, and I'm like, I want to explore this part too, not because I want to add a new aesthetics to my storytelling, like, oh yeah, I want it to have African vibes, but
Yeah.
I am also genuinely curious about where my people are from and why some of these stories stood the test of times for our culture. Why are these the stories that we still tell ourselves, why some faded away? What are so
Mm-hmm.
important about them? And just trying to explore them through some of these modern stories, mixing in some of these, things that I grew up with, like voodoo in issue 2, and
Mm-hmm.
because voodoo came from juju, so
Mm-hmm.
trying to just draw those, but it's also me trying to explore my own heritage through these stories. Like, why are they important? Maybe by
Mm-hmm.
telling these stories in other forms myself, I'll be able to look through these characters and understand that, oh yeah, this is why this was important to them.
Yeah, I love that. Like I said, I'm obviously people know me as Fat Thor. I'm a fan of the comic character, but I'm just a mythology nerd in general. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, just like you, I really love, looking at different mythology stories, whether it's Greek, Norse, or whatever, seeing, like you said, similarities, differences. I mean, there's a reason why these stories have been told for thousands and thousands of years. So I think that that just adds such a great level to your writing, and it just especially with Aurora, just brings in a whole new kind of view. I feel like that. I mean, I don't claim to be a Storm expert. I'm a big fan of the character, but from my knowledge, it's something like a lot of writers haven't really explored really in depth. So to
Yeah.
me, again, your series, when I picked it up, it just again kind of had a whole new light for me. And so we're going to start getting into Storm, because obviously that's what we're here for. I could literally talk to you about mythology all day long, which we should one of these days. But like we mentioned before, you wrote a story, My Grandfather Was a God, got the attention of Marvel editor Tom Brevoort, and then they brought you in to do a story in Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood, and then you got I Am Iron Man. All this good stuff. This finally leads to X-Men From the Ashes, relaunching the whole line from Krakoa. And you get, so I'm guessing it's a phone call. I don't know, maybe these days it's an email, but you get some kind of
Exactly.
contact from
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, and they're like, hey, we want you in the X-Men. First, okay, first of all, my first question on this quick one: did you pick Storm? Because I've heard from, so like I talked to Jackson Lansing, Colin Kelly. They talk about how they picked like their NYX team. Gail Simone picked her Uncanny team. Did you get a choice with a solo character, or did they specifically ask you for Storm? And two, what was that call
Like,
message like? Like, what were you just like? Oh my gosh!
when we got the call from Marvel, like the email from Marvel for after for Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood, like after they discovered my grandfather was a god, and that's what to do Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood. They asked Doctor and myself, that's my best friend and artist, what are our favorite characters and characters we like to tell stories with, and when we listed the characters, Storm was one of them. So maybe they noted that. So that's the one. And there was also another time online on Twitter where someone asked me, after I am Iron Man, like, what other characters would I like to write? And I said Phyla and Storm. And Tom Brevoort replied to that tweet and said, noted. So that was the second time. So the third time was now when I got the email with the tag Storm. So
Oh
so
man,
at
I
that
bet
point, I don't know if
your
I.
heart was racing.
so so at that time, I don't know if I picked Storm like in their minds,
Like
or
subconsciously.
yeah, or if I was given Storm. So yeah, so I would say I was given Storm, but
A
any
little
other
bit of
character I
both.
use, yeah, but any other character I use in this Storm series, I get to pick them just the way any other book gets to pick their cast. So yes, I think what was the second question?
Like, I mean, you kind of
Yeah, what
answered
was it
already, but
like?
just like
Yeah.
how,
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh my
I
gosh.
was excited. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
was I was freaking excited because I just finished Akogun. Then I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, and then seeing this big news. And at that time too, I also thought Marvel didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore. Because after we did I Am Iron Man, no other projects came up. And I'm like, oh my God, all the stories you always hear from creators is they always say, oh, you think it's hard to get into comics, right? Yeah, trust me, it's harder to stay in comics. So I've always kept that at the back of my mind. So I was like, okay, I've tried for like 5 years. I've been working in indie comics, and all those stuff for 5 years before we got into Marvel. And now I'm here, and I've stopped getting any emails, any calls, nothing from any editor at
Mm,
Marvel. I reached out to every editor, like, is there any work? Like, do you have like, you know, those online vertical scroll, the Infinity comic, the anything,
mm.
no reply, nothing. So I'm like, damn, I think I am Iron Man did so badly. They don't want to have anything to do with me ever again. Like, that book must have done so poorly, or something. And
Obviously not.
obviously that I started I've seen shops say that, oh yeah, like it's a regular seller for them. Anybody that just wants to get introduced to Iron Man, they always pick up this trade, you know. So it's so when I got the email, it was first relief that okay, I'm not like blacklisted or anything. Because I even thought maybe did I tweet something nasty or something that
Yeah.
they're like,
Oh, they
yeah, we're
do
not
like
working with that
me.
guy anymore. So that was first the relief, like okay, I'm not like blacklisted or anything. So
Yeah.
and then second was like, oh my god, it's Storm, like damn, you know, and all the possibilities were rushing through my brain, like all the things you could do with Storm. But then I instantly I also got scared. I'm like, oh man, if you mess this up, I don't think there's any recovering from this. Like if you
Yeah.
mess this up, you are done. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh man. So I wanted to turn it down. I was going to
Oh,
turn it down.
really? Ooh,
Yeah. So
man.
but my sister said, I'm a Nigerian. I should at least do it for the money.
I
So
mean, hey, I mean, she ain't wrong, right? She is not
yeah.
wrong.
And my friend Dotun, that's also the artist, says um you're still going to read the Storm series even if you're not writing it. And if the story is not as good as what you have in your mind, every single month you're going to hate yourself for not saying yes. So why don't you just give it a shot, you know? So and
Yeah,
that's why I was
that's
like, okay.
also a really good
Uh,
point.
uh, so I'm like, okay, let's I'm going to say yes, and you know, let's start breaking down the story and doing more research and stuff like that. So
Wow.
it was mixed emotions. I
It's
wanted to do it so
close.
badly, but I was
Hmm.
also very scared. I was also very
Yeah.
scared. I didn't want to be the artist. I didn't want to be the writer that messed up, you know, the Storm solo series, because we
Yeah,
don't get
I
many
can.
of them. We don't
Hmm.
get many of them, and they don't usually last that long. So you know, I think the last Storm solo was like 14 or 10 years ago. So I'm
Yeah.
like, if you're going to bet on Storm again, there's so much hype now, there's so much trust, there's so much. If I mess this up, you know, I don't think anyone would forgive me because it's like, when is she going to get the chance ever again?
I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, I could only imagine. I'm not even a comic writer, but if like Marvel was like, hey, do you want to write a Thor book? I would, like you said, like obviously you want to do it, but there is like a sort of responsibility that comes with that as well. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just from us talking here and from the research I've been doing on you, it seems like this was fate. Like Storm is the perfect character for you to write, like for all the reasons that we just went through. So again, I could totally
Thank you.
understand like that fear of like this is perfect, so like but what if I drop the ball, right? But
But
I
yes.
I'm so glad that that is a what if universe that we don't live in, because I am so glad you took this job, because again, I love this series, and something that I really love about it that you kind of touched on already is we're taking our time with it. I mean,
Mhm.
I love a lot of titles. Obviously, doing this show, I keep up with pretty much everything. And like you said, there's patterns and, you know, there's certain things you can pick out. And a lot of times I feel like we're in a rush. Like it's like we have to get to the inciting incident so then we can get to this and then we can get to this. But with your series, I really enjoy how, like you said, we haven't even gotten our main villain yet. And we're really just kind of taking our time with Aurora. Where is she at now after Krakoa, after Araco, all these crazy things? What is she doing? Where is she at, like mentally as a person? And you
Building
start this series.
mysteries. Mhm.
Yes, exactly. And you start this series off proposing a very interesting question to the reader, and one that I want to throw back at you. And it opens up with, who is Aurora Monroe? And we get the little, you know, excuse me, some of her accolades, you know, Queen of Wakanda, Region of Araco, Avenger, X-Men. But who is Aurora Monroe? So I want to ask you, for you as the writer, who is Aurora Monroe to you?
Yeah, that's a loaded one. It's one you don't expect to get in an interview. But I think Oromoro is someone that's been knocked down for so long and so often. She's almost all her relationships have, you know, ended poorly, and it's usually the other person that breaks up with her. She lost her parents at a very young age. She had to live on the streets. She eventually had an adopted mother that died as well. When she was living in Kenya, she was even living in the cities in Kenya. She was living in like the outskirts kind of villages, you know, and everything about her, you're supposed to see this person and think she's dirt. You're supposed to think she's nothing and worthless. And yet, when you speak to her, when you see the way she carries herself, you will think she was born in a palace. And it's not pride, it's not her pretending to be what she is not. She genuinely believes herself to be this big person, to be this goddess. And that is just so fascinating. And that's what I love most about her. That no matter how much you knock her down, no matter how much scars she gets, you never see them because she doesn't focus on them either. She just keeps moving forward.
I love that. Beautifully said. And again, if you're reading Storm out there, you totally see all of those themes just in these 3 issues. We're only 3 issues into this book. I mean, I can only imagine where we're going to go from here. And another amazing aspect of this book that I absolutely love is the art by Lucas Wernick. I mean, it
Mm.
is jaw dropping like almost every page, even just like the subtle panel pages of like her and Doom talking, just so fantastic. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that collaboration there between you two. How, is are you just letting him loose? Is he just, just going crazy, or do you like very often have like a very specific idea of like how you want a splash page to look?
um, Number one, Lucas Wernick is amazing. Is amazing. When it comes to design, and not just character design, not just fashion design.
Mm-hmm,
We're also talking about architecture design as well.
mm-hmm.
Every form of design is a master at it, and it does everything beautifully. His characters are very expressive, and he has this emphasis on beauty, which I think is very necessary for a project like this. And he was one that suggested colorist Alex Guimarães to to work on the project, saying that he knows how to color in best. And if you've been seeing this project, you will see those colors. And Alex
Popping.
Guimarães also has deep understanding of color harmonies. The
Mm-hmm.
colors just work. No color is put
Yeah.
there at random. No shade of color is put there at random. Everything is very decisive, and yet it's it's just good. It's just good.
Yeah.
So both of them are working at the top of their games, and at the same
Mm-hmm.
time with Mateus Mananini on covers. So like the Storm series is blessed with this wonderful talent.
Mm-hmm.
But what Yeah, so that's been fantastic. And a lot of stuff I just let Lucas do Lucas cook.
Mm-hmm.
Like Eternal Storm. Eternal Storm, yes, I wanted this character to be this powerful, this thing, but I would say the design is mostly him. You
Yeah.
The Storm Sanctuary, those little cone kind of things, all those stuff, it's him. So a lot of all this design works and all those stuff is him. But a lot of all the script elements too were written before I knew Lucas Warner could be on the project.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also wanted, I think that's also why probably Tom Brewer chose Lucas. I'm not sure. I also wanted some of all this emphasis on beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I want these characters to look good. So for the project to, also working already. I was also already putting Bibles, visual Bibles, like the art Bible and all the stuff. Like, okay, this is how I think this project should look,
Mhm.
like the art style of some sort. I would like it to lean a little bit more towards realism than cartoony, emphasis on fashion. All the characters should express themselves through their clothes. One thing I really don't enjoy is when, I read a comic book and everybody's constantly just wearing t-shirts and pants, like I I I I think these people are grand and big,
Mhm.
let them dress in ways that also express how they are, if someone is brutish, let us see that brutish behavior in their clothes, if this person is elegant, let's see it too, so all those elements were described in the script, and then Lucas runs with it. You know,
Mhm.
same thing with the colors and everything. So I think my scripts are usually more detailed than the average script. I think Gail Simo still kind of like jokingly made fun of me on the internet saying that my scripts for like 20-page comics are like 65 pages, and
I mean, hey, you got
and
to
stuff
cover
like
your
that. So
bases, man. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, a lot of it too. I also like reference images, like, yeah, I
Mm,
want this person to look like this. I want this clothes to look like this cool design I saw on the runway, and
mhm.
different stuff like that. So yeah, it's really be cool collaborating, because I think we are both we both have emphasis on the same things, so it's easy for the work to like gel.
Yeah, it just sings, and man does it sing. And I didn't even I noticed it but didn't really put two and two together until you just said it. But the her outfits in this series are absolutely incredible. But I didn't even, like I said, I didn't even
The-
really realize it until just now, but they totally have coincided with like what
with
is going on with the story. Like we start
and our
off in the
moods and different things.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
moods, we start off with like the not classic, but like the crazy black, like elegant super suit, and then like in issue 3, the latest one, when she's just hanging around the X-Men, like it's casual.
Yes.
So yeah, I that's just such a great added element that I am now going to be looking out for more as we continue
Yeah.
reading. But
Yeah.
I Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
sorry.
sorry to interrupt. Like another thing too is I think there was a time I was dating a girl that I made watch a cartoon show called Daria, like by MTV, and she was loving it, and suddenly she just stopped watching it. And I was like, why? She was like, oh, the characters keep wearing the same clothes every day. Like she just got tired of saying that. So, and
Yeah.
I've always been paying attention to that also.
Mhm.
So, and one of the things I also liked about Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey's Moon Knight, you know, is when you have Moon Knight and when you have Mr. Knight, and when you also have when he wears the bone armor to fight the ghosts, a lot of Spider-Man stuff that you like, when he's working with Shield, and then he has this Agent of Shield kind of, you know,
Mhm.
costume and all those stuff. So we're trying to play with that here too. So in this series, for example, Storm is going to have 4 costumes, not just one
Oh,
like you'd seen.
let's go.
So we've introduced one, that's the black and gold one that she wears on the
Mhm.
Avengers. We've introduced the white and gold one called the Brutal Storm, where that's what she wears in issue 2.
Yeah, damn,
And
I love that name.
yeah, and 3 is Eternal Storm. That's the one we also saw at the last panel in issue 1. And then the fourth one is the Armored Storm. And that we're going to get in like issue 6, where she wears this full vibranium armor when the X-Men show up in the Storm Sanctuary.
Let's go. Yes, I'm a sucker for costumes. Like anytime a character, I know some people are like weird about that, but like I said, I'm a sucker for it. I love a cool new costume. So that is
So she's going
music
to be
to my
rotating
ears.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say one thing. I know that I have no power in this dynamic at all, and this is an up top call. But I will just throw it out there. You threw out writing Storm, and it worked out. So maybe it'll work out for me too. I would love to see her as Guardian Armor return from the Thor corpse. I'm just saying we got a little bit of it in the first issue. We saw that little panel of it. But I'll just throw it out there. I would love to see that
Yeah,
again. That would
I
be
think
great.
we also saw it a little in Ali Win's run on Immortal Thor.
Yes, yep. She
Yeah.
was popped up. I think she actually just rocked it in What If like a day or so
Yes,
ago.
yes,
I'm a little
yes.
behind on the show, but I did see that and it made me very,
It
very
looks
happy.
cool.
Yeah,
That
but
looks cool.
back to your stuff. That's other stuff. Back to your Storm. So one of my last questions, I could keep you here all day and talk to you all day about this stuff, but something I really, really wanted to ask you again, something I really loved about this third issue, and excuse me, to me, just like really went in a direction I was not expecting, but makes so much sense. And that is, again, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. You introduce Storm's more kind of mystical, supernatural side of her history. Again, not that it has ever been a secret or anything, but again, something I
Mm-hmm.
feel like hasn't really been explored too often. And so you're diving just straight into it with this issue 3. And I know we can't get into spoilers, nor would I want to, but I'm assuming that's going to play a decent role moving forward. So, when you were crafting your story, obviously, again, with all the stuff we talked about, with your background, it's natural that you would bring that into the story. But why do you think it's important for Aurora at this point in her life to reconnect with that side of her? Again, a lot of stuff has happened in the last couple years with Krakoa and Arako. So again, how do you think this influences her now at this point in her life?
Um, at uh, at a professional level rather than story wise, I personally, when I try to write characters, I try to look at different iterations that they've gone through in the past, and I look for a way that I can consolidate everything into one character. I I like to believe that the different versions that we have is still one person. So how can I tell a story that will show that all these different versions of her that we've had still exists? The softer Storm that we had in Chris Claremont's era, and the more combative Storm that we have in Al Ewing's X-Men Red, because she was on Araco. They are all the same person. How do I make that work? So that's also my goal. So it's also all the stories we've heard about. Oh, she Align is favored by Oshtor. Oh, she has this proclivity to magic, and everything. Like, okay, let's consolidate it. Let's make everything click. Let's make everything work. So it's I think it's also more of that for my approach to storytelling generally. Yeah, it's something I also did in I Am Iron Man,
Mm-hmm.
almost using the armors as representative of what he has been in all the past. He's been director of Shield, he's been this, and try to say, he's still all these things in one. So that's my approach to this. So it's more of that. Like, I want to make sense of everything. And this is also a solo series. I also think
Mm-hmm.
a solo, because all these stories we've been getting them from, this Extreme X-Men, X-Men Gold, X-Men Red, like, these are things that should be in our solo series. They will
Mm-hmm.
be easier to explore that way. They'll be easy to remember. So I'm like, okay, let's explore them here. And yes, I do plan for magic to come up later. But it will come up. It will come up. And when it comes up, it's going to be
Yes.
very epic.
Yes, I mean I saw you tweet the other day something about her smacking Eternity or the Living Tribune, one of those two. So I know it's about to get crazy. I like I said, I cannot wait, and you hit the nail on the head perfectly. one thing again, I've raved how much I loved this book many times in this interview, but another thing I love about it, and I think makes it stand out from the other From the Ashes line. I mean, we have, let's see, Wolverine, Dazzler, Psylocke, Jean Grey. At least those are the solos that come to mind. Out of all of those, a lot of them to me feel like kind of a return to form. Like Wolverine, we're back in the wilderness. He's, hunting stuff that, we're going back to kind of basics after Krakoa. But Storm truly feels like a progression. Like Storm is progressing from all those events that happen. And I really think that is what, at least for me, really makes it stand out and just has such a distinct flavor from the entire rest of the line. So I cannot praise this story enough, praise your writing enough. It has absolutely been fantastic. I know others have been absolutely loving it. I see people raving about it online. So it's not just me.
Yeah.
But again, I wish we could go. I have so many other questions about like power scaling and all that, but I gotta ask for the people out there. Again, I know we can't get into spoilers. I don't want to get into spoilers, but is there anything that you can maybe tease a little bit what fans can expect moving forward?
Definitely. First thing about like the other solos, I think it's also the nature of the characters themselves. Like I said, when it comes to Storm, when she when she gets knocked down, she goes further. That's you know, when she's poor, she becomes more ambitious. When she's sick, it's when she lost her power, she became the leader of the X-Men. You know, like, oh, you had your full powers, you went to the leader. No, it's when I lose my powers, I become the leader of the X-Men. So that's Storm. For other characters, when they are hit hard, like something as hard as Fall of X, they retreat into their shells to try to heal and try to stabilize and then come back stronger. But that's not Storm. So I think that's why our book comes off more that way.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, and talking about teases for future issues, we're talking about mythology. We've talked about Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Yoruba mythology, and a little thing I noticed was that there was a lot of cultures always have a storm god, and I had to analyze, what do they have in common, what don't they have in common, what's special about each culture's portrayal of storm gods, and we are also saying Storm is a storm god. So how does that come into play?
I think I'm smelling a Thor cameo coming in soon. I hope, at least I hope so. That would be incredible.
So it's, when the challenges of storm gods come your way, are you going to, when people call you a storm god and you occasionally call yourself a storm god as well, when the challenges of an actual storm god shows up, how ready would you be? So we have that, we have the X-Manhunt event that's coming up with Storm, and she's going to be having some interactions with the Alaskan X-Men, and yeah, Storm and Cyclops have been going in different directions for a while. So, are they going to realign, or would they have to face each other? So
I can't wait for
that's something. That's issue 6. The last one I said about the Storm God is issue 7. For issue 5, the title is Oblivion Waits No Longer. So, and I like to think the opposite of eternity is oblivion. So when eternity has chosen you to, be his hosts, you would have to face oblivion at some point. So,
Oh
you
my!
know,
This series is about to get even crazier, dude. I can. Oh my
so
gosh! I said a tease. Now that was a tease, my man. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, that is gonna be
so that
so cool.
there's that, and there's a mystery, cosmic entity that is going to be showing up in later issue. You know, is the physical embodiment of destruction. We'll find out what that is and what are the plans of eternity for that entity.
Oh
So
man.
it's about, so everybody say that, oh, medicine is slow. It's because of building.
Not slow. Not. I would not say slow.
But we're about to
Hit the gas.
reach the omega point where everything goes nuts. So
Let's go. Let's
it's
go, people. You heard it here first. I mean, this if you're not on this series, that should have sold you right there. You have to get on this. We're only 3 issues in right now. So this is the perfect time to hop in before, like you said, we really start hitting the gas. But my man, I cannot thank you enough for being here today. We're going to have to get you back here in a couple more issues so we can reconvene on
yeah,
all this
sure.
and I can ask you some more questions. But before we get out of here, I obviously Storm. That's what we've been talking about all day. But throw it off to you for a second. Tell the people where can they find you. Do we got anything else to look out for? Anything coming on the horizon?
um I think right now you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Ayodele Murewa. And but I'm usually more active on Twitter, where I answer questions, I respond to um yeah, questions. Basically, I'm usually always available. So for projects, keep ordering your Storm. It's peak, it's approaching peak. It's Trust me, like I get to stages where I'm writing the script and I stand up from my chair and I'm like, yes, yes, and that's that's how crazy it is.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten artwork for some of these issues and they are crazy. They are really, really crazy. So there's that. I'm also writing X Manont Omega. That's the finale. I'm writing that with Gail Simone. That's the finale for the X Manont event, and it's going to be drawn by Gleb Malnikov. You know him from, he's the one like on Amazing Spider-Man right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going
Yeah.
to be the one drawing the issue, and
Man, what a
it's
team
it's
on that.
so it's going to be really, really good. It's going to be really, really good. So this is the first major event in from the Ashes,
Mm-hmm.
so we're not going to hold anything back for the finale.
I cannot wait. That is so awesome, dude. Like I said, I have been loving this whole From the Ashes line. We've been fortunate enough to interview a couple creators across the new line, but oh man, it's Storm's on a different level, man. It's just everything you're talking about is totally exemplified. But you said we're reaching peak. I think we're there already. I really do. If you're a fan of Storm, you have no excuse not to be reading this series. Like you have go support your local comic shop. Go make sure that you have Storm on your pull list. And my friend, again, thank you so much for being here today. It has been an
Thank you for
absolute
having me.
pleasure. Everybody out there watching and listening, thank you as well for joining us. Be sure to keep up with all the things we have going on in Agents of Fandom. You can find us Agents Fandom on TikTok and Instagram, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. And we got so many cool stuff. We have basically a show for every show that's on TV right now. Creature Commandos, What If, we just started a new one. I can't even remember because there's so many things. We got so much stuff going. So make sure to subscribe, follow, hit that like button. However, you can tell people that you enjoy our content. Please do it. And we will see you guys all next time.